So this week's episode of Steins Gate Zero, something very interesting happens in this episode that I think might go overlooked, but I really like this little wink and a nudge that it gives the viewer. Daru in this entire episode is about Daru and Yuki getting together, because otherwise Suzuha will be erased. Obviously we know now that it wasn't, it was just her trying to get her mother and father together so she could experience that mother and father relationship that she really never got to have, because in the future everything is just absolute hell and chaos and her mother dies at a fairly young age. So it just makes sense on why she's so bound and bent on getting Daru and Yuki together, but something happens to Daru in this episode that Maho does to him, and I like the idea of this because it's really starting to put things into perspective about the shady professor and what happen to Kagri in the future. Now, the whole idea that Maho brings up this sort of like brainwashing machine where she whispers subliminal messages into his head to turn him into a ladies' man, turn him into someone all the ladies are going to want to be with, except Yuki, because Yuki likes Daru for who he is, not this kind of playboy wannabe. So it's interesting that it just gets introduced very quickly and then brushed aside fairly quickly. Maho brings up this machine, can just put messages into someone's head. So I'm curious, if they already have this level of technology, where would that technology go in the future, and is that what happened to Kagri? Is that how her mind got so messed up because of the prototype that Maho used in the future gets even worse? Like, it just puts things into so much perspective and really paints the professor and his gang of misfits right now even worse than they already were painted. Now, I think it's clear that the whole reason that the professor wants Okabe to come with him, study with him, just overall be in his group of scientists is because he knows who Okabe is and what Okabe will make in the future. He knows about the time travel. I think it's very clear that that information was taken from Kagri, and ultimately everything about just his kind of affection for Okabe, it's not because Okabe's a smart guy, it's because he knows what the time travel is going to kind of present to the world in the future due to Kagri coming from the future and clearly being under their watch for many years. So I really like how this episode, it really kind of puts things in much more perspective. Obviously, we still don't have all the answers of what's truly going on, but I think it explains the professor and his motives and just how things might have happened a bit better while being surrounded by a pretty normal, pretty happy, and just overall fun episode. But I wanted to make note of that because I think it's very important. But this episode was actually pretty sweet. Obviously, we knew we had to see something like this. We needed either an episode or we needed to see multiple scenes of Daru and Yuki getting closer together, because otherwise, how the hell is Suzuha going to be born? We know that obviously Yuki likes Daru, so when is the move going to be made? And I actually like how they paced it, how Daru really wasn't confident in himself. He thinks he has no looks, he has nothing about a personality that anyone of her kind of stature would even want to be with. You know, she's good looking, she could really have any man in his eyes, so why would she even want someone like him who he thinks he's nothing? So I really like just the whole idea of him trying to be a playboy, but that's clearly not what Yuki likes, and then the overall progression of once he actually just acts like himself, they have the best date imaginable, because even though he's incredibly nerdy, she likes that about him, and she's a little nerdy herself. So I really like that, and I just enjoy that, you know, Suzuha really wanted to see something like this because clearly World War III is what happens in her future. It's war-driven. There's a reason why she's so bound and bent on getting Okabe on board with fixing this timeline, because this is a timeline that no one should have to live. She was a soldier when she was a kid. Her mother got brutally killed just walking home with seemingly groceries in her arms. That's not something that anyone should have to live through, so of course she's bound and bent on fixing this timeline. And what I quite like is just seeing the overall progression of her, you know, kind of presenting to Daru and the viewer like, hey, I'm going to be erased soon if you don't get together with mom soon. I'm already starting to fade from the picture, but clearly it was just, you know, her filtering the pictures around, just trying to get her mother and father together so she could experience what a family life would look like. Sure, it's not totally perfect because somehow she's kind of hanging out with her mother and father in the past, but still, it's something she never really got to experience because it was a war-driven time when she was alive in her timeline. So just seeing the overall progression of Daru kind of gaining his own sense of confidence and just seeing where it ultimately ended up, her crying at the end, it was just really beautiful, but there was also a lot of really fun moments as well, like Maho coming from the airport and just the image of her next to her luggage. It was just absolutely hilarious, and just everything in between. Like, it was a very fun episode, but it constantly, like, even though I was having a blast, I was like, you go Daru, you know, get your girl, have everything be nice and peaceful, but clearly this is indicating like things are starting to make more sense with Kagri on how her mind could have been manipulated, and just everything in between. I thought this was just a really great directed episode. I think a lot of people could look at this as just being like the last happy episode for a while, but I thought it was actually a little unnerving with some of the technology that we're clearly being introduced to, and how much the professor really wants Okabe to kind of come with him back to America. But it's like, he doesn't want Okabe because he's a great mind. He wants Okabe because he knows what Okabe will create in the future, and I'm really excited to see where everything else is going to go. But let me know what you're feeling down in that comment section below. Whatever you're feeling, you love it, you hate it, your favorite moment, and be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.